Tesla took it upon itself to unleash an avalanche of information this week. From Autonomy Day to Model S and X upgrades to the Q1 earnings call, we have a lot to cover, so let's get down to business. This is Tesla Tidbits episode number 516 for April 25th, 2019. This show is sponsored by my supporter Richard. If you're in the market for a Model S, X, or 3, please consider using his referral code. Ask your salesperson to use code Richard174 or go direct to the web link ts.la/Richard174 and pick up a 1,000-mile supercharging credit for your new vehicle. Welcome back to the show, everyone. I know it's been a minute since the last episode, but with all the news that happened this week, I thought in the end, one large episode would work better. So let's get started with the earnings call. To start, let's check the major details from the quarterly update letter. In short, this was an ugly quarter, probably far uglier than anyone anticipated. Tesla lost $702 million in the quarter and went through $1.5 billion worth of its cash reserves, leaving it with $2.2 billion remaining. There were many mitigating factors as to why this was, as CFO Zachary Kirkhorn explains.
Overall, as we reflect on the progress of Q1, this was one of the most complicated quarters that I can think of in the history of the company. And it was ambitious even by Tesla's own standards. The global expansion of Model 3 was a huge theme within the quarter. We launched the standard range lineup for Model 3, product retooling for Model S and Model X, which Elon just talked about with the range enhancements and suspension upgrades. And then we implemented various pricing adjustments and worked through the corresponding impact that had on our order mix and deliverable cars.
Another piece of the puzzle, caused by those logistics issues, was the fact that literally half of the deliveries for Q1 were delivered in the final 10 days of the quarter. This is certainly not what you're hoping for, as it strains the entire system and limits your capability to deliver. Elon details the situation as well as the solution going forward.
This was the most difficult logistics problem I've ever seen, and I've seen some tough ones. So I'll say it again, we literally delivered half of all vehicles produced, or half of all deliveries occurred in literally the final 10 days of Q1. As a result, a large number of vehicle deliveries shifted into Q2, which caused Q1 net income to be negatively impacted, as we simply could not get the vehicles to customers physically in time. In response to this, we are in the process of regionally balancing our vehicle builds throughout the quarter. This will put much less strain on Tesla, result in a much better delivery experience for customers, and have a very positive effect on our working capital in the middle of the quarter.
Logistics problems, pricing changes, and revamping Model S and X were the major factors in the abysmal quarter. Speaking of those changes to Model S and X, Tesla sprung a surprise on us late Tuesday night when it revealed the very rumored drivetrain updates I detailed on the last show, save for the battery chemistry update, which may be the most impressive bit of the whole shooting match. Let's listen in as Elon explains.
We're continuing to make significant improvements to our vehicle lineup, including updating the Model S and X production line to accommodate the next generation of powertrains. So we announced this yesterday, and we're now in production with the significantly more advanced powertrain for the Model S and X, as well as an upgrade to the suspension system to have active adaptive damping in the suspension system, and to enable charging at 200 kilowatts, which is, and there are a number of other small changes. If anyone is thinking about upgrading their Model S or X, this is a great time to do it. And we also introduced a loyalty program where if somebody is an existing Tesla owner and they buy a performance Model S or X, they get the ludicrous upgrade for free. So they have a longer range. The Model S now has a range of 370 miles. This is an actual EPA range of 370 miles. And Motor Trend test drove the car a few days ago and drove nonstop all the way from San Francisco to Los Angeles at normal highway speeds. And they said they could have even gone faster. And they were in a headwind as well. So this is pretty remarkable that an electric car can go nonstop between the two biggest cities in California. I remember back when I was driving gasoline cars, I always had to stop at the gas station. This is literally better than a gasoline car, with rare exception. And there's also an increase in power. It accelerates faster. It's just better in every way. And we're able to do this without increasing the size of the battery pack, which is a testament to the powertrain team and for being able to improve the efficiency of the powertrain by such a significant margin. The upgraded powertrain for S and X was actually resulting in a significant cost down because we essentially took the high volume rear drive units of the Model 3, which is extremely efficient, the semi-permanent magnet motor and power electronics and everything, and we made a version of that for the front drive unit of S and X, and so we're actually able to get a cost reduction while improving range and performance of the car.
So the Model S can now reach 370 miles of range on a single charge in its largest battery configuration, while Model X can do 325 miles in the same setup. And they managed this by switching the front motor to a permanent magnet motor similar to Model 3's, reduced costs in the process, and didn't even have to touch the battery engineering to do so. The cherry on top, despite the lack of change in the battery setup, the new cars will be able to take advantage of V3 superchargers at up to 200 kilowatt rates, a roughly 38% increase from the 145 kilowatts they'll be able to handle on V2. Next up, Elon was asked about insurance on Teslas. Tesla had partnered with Liberty Mutual to offer a Tesla-specific product a while back, which for many wasn't much different than their existing provider. Elon sprung another surprise on us here.
The answer is yes, we are creating a Tesla insurance product, and we hope to launch that in about a month.
Okay.
It will be much more compelling than anything else out there.
One of the few questions asked about full self-driving during the call was around when current full self-driving owners that don't have the Tesla full self-driving computer could expect to get it. Elon obliged with a little more context around the time frame. Again, though, remember, take Elon time into account here.
From features and functionality standpoint, I think there's no point getting the FSD upgrade if you don't already have it in the car for probably about 2 or 3 months. That's when we'll start releasing features that are materially different from the feature set available on the version 2 hardware. So just no need to rush to get your computer replaced. It's like 2 to 3 months before it becomes relevant. And then it will obviously increase rapidly from then.
Finally, from the earnings call, an interesting question from Tony Sacconaggi about a capital raise. He notes that Elon has treated the thought of raising capital as a negative, making clear that Tesla didn't want or need to do so in recent times. But Sacconaggi says that during times of rapid growth, such infusions may be necessary to continue the rapid growth desired, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. Elon seems on board with this thought, but explains part of the reason that Tesla has held off more recently.
Yeah, I don't think raising capital should be a substitute for making the company operate more effectively. So that, in that sense, I think it's important to have a strong financial discipline at the company and just to make sure we don't have extraneous expenses and that we're just being frugal with capital. If we just keep raising capital every time, then we don't have the forcing function for improving the fundamental operation of the business. So I think it is healthy to be on a Spartan diet for a while. At this point, I do think there is some merit to raising capital. This is sort of probably about the right timing. But yeah.
So does that mean that investors should expect the capital raise in the near to medium term? And I hear you on the forcing constraint, but growth does eat cash, especially in the capital-intensive business. And if you really do believe you have a first-mover advantage, why wouldn't you want to push it as quickly as possible, even if it meant, raising capital in the short term?
Yeah, first of all, I should say that I don't think that capital has been a constraint on our growth thus far. And if I thought there was a fundamental constraint on growth, we would have faced capital before now. But I think it is very important as the company scales to make sure we are on a solid foundation, and that we have the appropriate financial discipline throughout the company and are spending money very efficiently. At this point, I think we are doing that. Not that there isn't more work to do, but I think Tesla today is a far more efficiently operating organization than it was a year ago. We've made dramatic improvements across the board, and so I think there's merit to the idea of raising capital at this point.
Just to add to that, I mean, the journey we've been on for the last 12 to 18 months on being more efficient in how we spend money has really changed the culture inside the company. It's enabled us to accelerate a number of cost reductions on the COGS side of our products, and then make improvements in operating expenses as well. And then as we look forward to capital investments for Giga Shanghai and Model Y, and ultimately a European facility, our capex per unit of capacity has come down significantly through the work from the team here. So I think it has been a very productive journey for us.
That'll do it for the earnings call. A couple things of note. Firstly, there was some talk about the Tesla ride-hailing network at the very beginning and projections of its success. With so much in motion for that to occur, I've really not been reporting much on this, because between a lack of two required products for it to occur, those being level 5 driving as well as the actual infrastructure for the network, in addition to Elon time, I don't want to be reporting on this for 3 years before there's any actual product. So check out the full audio in the show description if you're interested in the Tesla network. The other thing is that new CFO Zachary Kirkhorn said more in one call than I think I've heard from Deepak Ahuja since I've been covering the company, and he spoke in specifics as well. Those treating his promotion to CFO as a bad thing I think have some words to eat now, as at least to this layman, he sounded pretty adept at his position. Now we move over to the other landmark news of the week, the Autonomy Day event held on Monday. This was quite unique for Tesla, as it's the only time in the company's publicly traded history that I am aware of that they held such an event during market hours. Going into the event, this gave me the impression that Elon and Tesla were supremely confident in what they were about to show the world, and boy did they not disappoint. Firstly, I've included a video of the self-driving rides that attendees were given in the show description. If you've not taken in one of those yet, you should definitely check that out. Pete Bannon, the designer of Tesla's full self-driving computer, kicked off the event. Pete talked at length, and I mean at length, about the design of this computer. Elon wanted to set the stage by showing in gritty detail the foundation of the Tesla full self-driving solution, and boy did they ever.
The reason I asked Pete to do just a detailed, far more detailed than perhaps most people would appreciate, dive into the Tesla full self-driving computer is because at first it seems improbable. How could it be that Tesla, who has never designed a chip before, would design the best chip in the world? But that is objectively what has occurred. Not best by a small margin, best by a huge margin. It's in the cars right now. All Teslas being produced right now have this computer. We switched over from the NVIDIA solution for S and X about a month ago, and we switched over Model 3 about 10 days ago. All cars being produced have all the hardware necessary, compute and otherwise, for full self-driving.
So why exactly is this chip better than any other available solution? Elon has your answer there, too.
To be clear, the strategy here, and this started basically a little over 3 years ago, was design and build a computer that is fully optimized and aiming for full self-driving, then write software that is designed to work specifically on that computer and get the most out of that computer. So you have tailored hardware that is a master of one trade, self-driving. NVIDIA is a great company, but they have many customers. And so as they apply their resources, they need to do a generalized solution. We care about one thing, self-driving. so that it was designed to do that incredibly well. The software is also designed to run on that hardware incredibly well. And the combination of the software and the hardware, I think, is unbeatable.
And just in case anyone thought they were going to one-up Tesla on their hardware, Tesla isn't just sitting back and admiring its work.
It's maybe worth pointing out that we finished this design like maybe 1.5, 2 years ago and began design of the next generation. We're not talking about the next generation today, but we're about halfway through it.
One of the analysts present noted that the system seemed designed to handle video specifically and pondered whether it could be adapted to accept LiDAR input. Now, you would think at this point that everyone knows Elon's stance on LiDAR by now, and why he holds that stance, but alas, this question always seems to come up, and Elon, in his usual way, just annihilates anyone that would dare use LiDAR in the context of self-driving vehicles.
What we're going to explain to you today is that LiDAR is a fool's errand, and anyone relying on LiDAR is doomed. Doomed. Expensive sensors that are unnecessary. It's like having a whole bunch of expensive appendices. Like one appendix is bad. Well, now we're going to put a whole bunch of them. That's ridiculous. You'll see.
After Pete gave the gory details on the physical construction of the full self-driving computer, it was Andrej Karpathy's turn to take the stage. Andrej is the director of AI and autopilot vision at Tesla, and probably had the most interesting section of the day. To start, Andrej and Elon described why Tesla's fleet of cars sending back real-world data was such an advantage for Tesla to develop its full self-driving solution.
Now at Tesla, this is actually a screenshot of our own simulator. We use simulation extensively. We use it to develop and evaluate the software. We've also even used it for training, quite successfully so. But really, when it comes to training data for neural networks, there really is no substitute for real data. The simulations have a lot of trouble with modeling appearance, physics, and the behaviors of all the agents around you. So here are some examples to really drive that point across. The real world really throws a lot of crazy stuff at you. So in this case, for example, we have very complicated environments with snow, with trees, with wind. We have various visual artifacts that are hard to simulate potentially. We have complicated construction sites, bushes, and plastic bags that can go in, that can go around with the wind. Complicated construction sites that might feature lots of people, kids, animals, all mixed in, and simulating how those things interact and flow through this construction zone might actually be completely intractable. It's not about the movement of any one pedestrian in there. It's about how they respond to each other and how those cars respond to each other and how they respond to you driving in that setting. And all of those are actually really tricky to simulate. It's almost like you have to solve the self-driving problem to just simulate other cars in your simulation. So it's really complicated. So we have dogs, exotic animals. And in some cases, it's not even that you can't simulate it, it's that you can't even come up with it.
Yeah.
So for example, I didn't know that you can have truck on truck on truck like that, but in the real world, you find this, and you find lots of other things that are very hard to really even come up with. So really, the variety that I'm seeing in the data coming from the fleet is just crazy with respect to what we have in a simulator. We have a really good simulator.
Yeah, I think like simulation, you're fundamentally grading your own homework. So if you know that you're going to simulate it, okay, you can definitely solve for it. But as Andrej is saying, you don't know what you don't know. The world is very weird and has millions of corner cases. And if somebody can produce a self-driving simulation that accurately matches reality, that in itself would be a monumental achievement of human capability. They can't. There's no way.
On top of this, earlier on during Pete's portion of the presentation, Elon even made a joke about simulation, with a nod to his famous musings that we are very likely living in one.
If the simulation fully captured the real world, well, I mean, that would be proof that we're living in a simulation, I think. Yeah.
As Andrej continues the presentation, we come to a point where we get to see exactly how the computer is plotting the path the car is to take. And as we watch, the path is being overdrawn on the screen even when there's no visibility of the actual path. And it's 100% accurate.
I mean, the crazy thing is, the network is predicting paths it can't even see with incredibly high accuracy. It can't see around the corner, but it's saying the probability of that curve is extremely high. So that's the path. And it nails it.
As Andre wraps up his part of the presentation, he takes his own opportunity to hammer LiDAR as well.
So in summary, people drive with vision only. No lasers are involved. This seems to work quite well. The point that I'd like to make is that visual recognition, and very powerful visual recognition, is absolutely necessary for autonomy. It's not a nice to have. Like, we must have neural networks that actually really understand the environment around you. And LiDAR points are a much less information-rich environment. So vision really understands the full details. Just a few points around are much, there's much less information in those. So as an example, on the left here, is that a plastic bag or is that a tire? A LiDAR might just give you a few points on that, but vision can tell you which one of those two is true, and that impacts your control. Is that person who is slightly looking backwards, are they trying to merge into your lane on the bike, or are they just going forward? In the construction sites, what do those signs say? How should I behave in this world? The entire infrastructure that we have built up for roads is all designed for human visual consumption. So all of the signs, all of the traffic lights, everything is designed for vision. And so that's where all that information is, and so you need that ability. Is that person distracted and on their phone? Are they going to walk into your lane? Those answers to all these questions are only found in vision and are necessary for level 4, level 5 autonomy. And that is the capability that we are developing at Tesla. And this is done through combination of large-scale neural network training, through data engine and getting that to work over time, and using the power of the fleet. And so in this sense, LiDAR is really a shortcut. It sidesteps the fundamental problems, the important problem of visual recognition that is necessary for autonomy. And so it gives a false sense of progress, and it's ultimately a crutch. It does give like really fast demos. So if I was to summarize the my entire talk in one slide, it would be this. All of autonomy, because you want level 4, level 5 systems that can handle all the possible situations in 99.99% of the cases. And chasing some of the last few nines is going to be very tricky and very difficult, and is going to require a very powerful visual system. So I'm showing you some images of what you might encounter in any one slice of that 9. So in the beginning, you just have very simple cars going forward. Then those cars start to look a little bit funny. Then maybe you have bikes on cars. Then maybe you have cars on cars. Then maybe you start to get into really rare events like cars turned over, or even cars airborne. We see a lot of things coming from the fleet. And we see them at some rate, at like a really good rate compared to all of our competitors. And so the rate of progress at which you can actually address these problems, iterate on the software, and really feed the neural networks with the right data, that rate of progress is really just proportional to how often you encounter these situations in the wild. And we encounter them significantly more frequently than anyone else, which is why we're going to do extremely well.
LiDAR wasn't the only target of ridicule during the day, though. HD maps, touted by many as a necessity, also got roasted.
High-precision GPS maps and lanes are a really bad idea. The system becomes extremely brittle. So any change, like any change to the system makes it can't adapt. So if it locks onto GPS and high-precision lane lines, and does not allow vision override. In fact, vision should be the thing that does everything, and then, like, lane lines are a guideline, but they're not the main thing. We briefly balked up the tree of high precision lane lines, and then realized that was a huge mistake, and reversed it out. It's not good.
Speaking of lines not being the only thing, or even the primary thing required for the car to drive, one of the frequent questions about a full self-driving system is its ability to operate in inclement weather, especially for those of us in colder climates that see snow. Andre and Elon provide a rather enlightening answer, as I know I'd made the assumption that the cars were all about seeing those lane lines. At least in the new hardware, this isn't necessarily the case.
Actually, like today, Autopilot will do a decent job in snow, even when lane markings are covered. Even when lane markings are faded, covered, or when there's lots of rain on them, we still seem to drive relatively well. We didn't specifically go after snow yet with our data engine, but I actually think this is completely tractable, because in a lot of those images, even when things are snowy, when you ask a human annotator, where are the lane lines, they actually could tell you. They actually are relatively consistent in creating those lane lines. As long as the annotators are consistent on your data, then the neural network will pick up on those patterns and will do just fine. So it's really just about, is the signal there, even for the human annotator? If the answer to that is yes, then the neural network can do it just fine.
Yeah, there's actually, there are a number of important signals, as Andre was saying. So lane lines are one of those things, but one of the most important signals is drive space. So what is drivable space and what is not drivable space? What actually really matters the most is drivable space more than lane lines. And the prediction of drivable space is extremely good. And I think especially after this upcoming winter will be incredible. It's like, it will be like, how could it possibly be that good? That's crazy. Yeah.
The other thing to point out is maybe it's not even only about human annotators. As long as you as a human can drive through that environment, then through fleet learning, we actually know the path you took. And you obviously used vision to guide you through that path. You did not just use the lane line markings. You used the entire geometry of that entire scene. So you see, you see how the road is roughly curling. You see how the cars are positioned around you. Neural network will pick up on all of those patterns automatically inside it if you just have enough of the data people traversing those environments.
But the intelligence doesn't end there. The system is not only smart enough to determine where the road is going to be, but where things on and around it may end up. Stuart Bowers, VP of Engineering, takes us through a little bit of what the system is capable of here.
So we have a neural network running on our, say, wide fisheye camera. That neural network is not making one prediction about the world. It's making many separate predictions, some of which actually audit each other. So as a real example, we have the ability to detect a pedestrian. That's something we train very, very carefully on and put a lot of work into. We also have the ability to detect obstacles in the roadway, and a pedestrian is an obstacle. And it's shown differently to the neural network. It says, oh, there's a thing I can't drive through. And these together combine to give us an increased sense of what we can and can't do in front of the vehicle and how to plan for that. We then do this across multiple cameras because we have overlapping fields of view in many places around the vehicle. In front, we have a particularly large number of overlapping fields of view. Lastly, we can combine that with things like the radar and the ultrasonics to build these extremely precise understandings of what's happening in front of the car. We can use that both to learn future behaviors that are very accurate. We can also build very accurate predictions of how things will continue to happen in front of us. So one example I think is really exciting is we can actually look at bicyclists and people and not just ask, where are you now, but where are you going? And this is actually the heart of what we're doing for our next generation automatic emergency braking system, which will not just stop for people in your path, but will stop for people who are going to be in your path.
While Teslas are really reliable due to their lack of parts that are required by cars with a standard gas engine, it is still possible for them to break down, just like any car. But what if something fails with a car that drives itself? Tesla has already thought of this.
In order to have a self-driving car or robotaxi, you really need redundancy throughout the vehicle at the hardware level. So starting in, I believe it was October 2016, all cars made by Tesla have redundant power steering. So we have redundant motors on the power steering. So any one failure of if the motor fails, the car can still steer. All of the power and data lines have redundancy. So you can sever any given power line or any data line, and the car will keep driving. The auxiliary power system, even if the main pack, you lose complete power in the main pack, the car is capable of steering and braking using the auxiliary power system. You can completely lose the main pack, and the car is safe. The whole system, from a hardware standpoint, has been designed to be a robotaxi since basically October 2016.
So how long can we expect these new self-driving vehicles to last? Turns out, a very long time.
We're designing the cars the same way that commercial semi-trucks are designed. Commercial semi-trucks are all designed for a million-mile life, and we're designing the cars for a million-mile life as well.
So the million, or perhaps multi-billion-dollar question is, when do we get to see all this happen? Elon believes it'll be a 3-step process that will complete by the end of 2020.
Yeah, there's 3 steps to self-driving. There's being feature complete, then there's being feature complete to the degree that where we think that the person in the car does not need to pay attention, and then there's being at a reliability level where we've also convinced regulators that is true. So there's kind of like 3 levels. We expect to be feature complete in self-driving this year, and we expect to be confident enough from our standpoint to say that we think people do not need to touch the wheel, look out of the window, sometime probably around, second quarter of next year. and then we start to expect to get regulatory approval, at least in some jurisdictions, for that towards the end of next year. That's roughly the timeline that I expect things to go on.
And that is it for today's show. This is undoubtedly the longest show I've ever produced. I am quite proud of it, and I hope you've enjoyed it. As always, I have to give some love to the super patrons supporting the show at the $10 plus level over at patreon.com/Tesla Tidbits. They are Drew Schuyler, John Waller, Ryan Scarborough, Lee Sweet, William Henry Crew III, Dorian Steve Guberman, Bruno Quindici, Joey Boots, Ralph and Cheryl Waterhouse, Adam Raymer Brown, Megawatt Photovoltaic Development, Todd Sullivan, Robert Healy, Mitch Long, Zortec LED Canada, Morven Ogg, Blake Thompson, Raymond and Deborah Malkowitz, T Sportline, Michael Pastroni, Travis and Cheyenne Rush, Cookie UK, Chris Hovis, Craig Murphy, Vicky Kirk, Ricky Johnston, Bien Concepcion, Nathan Garza, Paul Goona, and Ed Patterman. If you have feedback for me, the best way to be heard is to tweet at Tesla Tidbits and use the hashtag AskTeslaTidbits if you'd like your question to be considered for the show. That is it for the week. Tesla has broken me. I'll see everyone back here again on Monday. Until then, keep it charged and hit the road.